The Caldari state is an authoritarian militaristic nation, founded on the pillars of duty, loyalty, efficiency, and hard work. While not as large a society as that of the Gallente or the Amar, the state is still universally respected and admired. Its economy is fundamentally sound, and its military, despite its smaller size, is fully equal to that of any other empire, thanks to a well-kept fleet packed with cutting-edge technology. A nation built on corporate capitalism, the Caldari state is run by a group of 8 megacorporations who divide territory between themselves, controlling and overseeing nearly every aspect of society. Each corporation comprises of thousands of smaller companies, ranging from industrial companies to law firms. All real estate is owned by the companies, which then lease it to the citizens. Government and policing are also both handled by independent companies funded by each of the megacorporations. Before the founding of the state, the Caldari were not a singular entity. Like their Gallente neighbours, they were composed of different races on different continents across Caldari Prime, although the bulk of the population was located on the Ticciona continent. Ticciona was united between AD 17,453 and AD 20,988 under the Rata Empire, with existing ethnicities at the time organised into political entities in the form of houses. The term Caldari was coined after first contact with the Gallente in AD 22,517, as a planetary identifier used to distinguish the races of their homeworld from those of their newfound partners. By this point, each Caldari race was organized into its own fully fledged nation on Caldari Prime, with minimal to no cross-ethnic mingling. The boundaries between these ethnicities were profound, not only in physical appearance, but also culturally, with the Caldari's concept of a nation differing vastly from the Gallente's definition, the latter of which tended to be built around ideology rather than race or culture. Even when the megacorporations secretly colonized regions of space on behalf of their master nations, the Caldari continued to identify by their original ethnicity. This practice continued after the founding of the Federation, and it was not until the secession of the Caldari in AD 23,154 that the situation changed. When the Chief Executive Panel usurped control of the homeworld from the indigenous nations, all who supported the secession were swept along in the following social upheaval. As the all-encompassing corporate state came into being, the Caldari psyche and society were shaped into new forms. The largest Caldari ethnicities, the Detaeus and the Severe, were deeply affected by these changes and moulded to the norm. Other ethnicities, including the Gallente, who had long been residents of the Caldari homeworld, were brought into the fold, where all are now identified as one race. Influenced by the Suku-Vesta Corporation, a people known as the Achura decided to join the Caldari in their secession as a client state. Their pre-industrial Achura Empire, which had been discovered by Suku-Vesta during the secret colonization many decades prior, was uprooted and replaced by minority Caldari rule. This mostly affected major population centers, which were developed to become full cities according to the Caldari standard. Rural areas were mostly ignored, dotted with thousands of Achura monasteries which, to this day, preserve the culture and heritage of the Achura Empire. Some, of course, were displaced for industrial operations in cases where they were located on valuable land. But for the most part, Achura who had not been assimilated remained reclusive and introverted, cut off from the state as a whole, and for the most part untouched by its influence. It was only at the beginning of the Capsuleer era that the Achura acquired interstellar recognition, as many of them, discovering a natural aptitude, sought out capsuleer trading. Over the course of the Gallente-Caldari War, militant fringe groups of Intaki, experienced military personnel in particular, sympathized with the state and asked to join the Caldari navy. Wary of the fact that the Intaki had a very different culture to the Caldari, but still pragmatic enough to realize the military and political benefits of enlisting turncoat veterans, Caldari officers placed these Intaki in segregated divisions. The most famous of these forces was commanded by Mordu's Legion founder Muria Mordu, who led his division to its status as one of the most successful, revered, and battle-hardened units of the war. At the end of the war, many of these Intaki were offered cheap land and accommodation in Washchi City on Kamakor 4, though those who had abandoned their cultural heritage and fully integrated into the Caldari lifestyle had long since become full citizens. Due to the fact that these Intaki continued to maintain their separate identity and distinct ways, their presence caused tension with native Caldari, especially xenophobic radicals who fed on the aggressive foreign policy of the state. A significant number of the Intaki, facing expatriation, sought assistance from their former commander, Muria Mordu, a turn of events which would later lead to the formation of Mordu's Legion, one of the most legendary mercenary groups in New Eden's history. In the end, the Intaki were able to resettle in Washchi City while retaining their identity and culture. The meteoric rise to power of Tibus Heth and the Caldari Providence Directorate, the CPD, in YC 110, again put emphasis on ethnic identity, regardless of cultural compliance, the two being defined as synonymous with one another by the Provost government. Hundreds of thousands of Federation expatriates were quarantined and unlawfully incarcerated, or, in some instances, deported across state borders, while full state citizens of Gallente origin found themselves on the violent end of angry mobs. Today, the Caldari state is built on the cornerstones of patriotism and hard work that carried its ancestors through the hardships of living on an inhospitable, barren homeworld. Megacorporations. The 8 largest and most influential corporations within the Caldari state are as follows. CBD. The CBD Corporation is one of the biggest import-export specialists in Caldari space. It has established trade links across the cluster, with a huge amount of goods in constant flux across the borders of the Caldari state. Though relatively young in years as far as Caldari megacorporations go, CBD has built up a tremendous net of associates over its comparatively brief lifespan, and is today quite possibly the megacorporation most connected with every level of Caldari society. CBD has been known to call in favors from questionable elements of society when more traditional channels have failed, and out of all of the Big Eight's members, it has become known as one of the most ruthless with its business practices, though it is not above the occasional bit of extravagant philanthropy, if it serves CBD's interests and proves to result in positive public relations. Hyasioda is one of the oldest Caldari megacorporations, formed shortly after contact with the Gallente. Conservative and cautious in its business dealings, Hyasioda focuses mainly on tried and tested subsistence industries, such as agriculture, mining, and consumer products. Its operations are largely confined to the state itself, though it has partnerships with foreign companies to market its many products in foreign territories. Hyasioda was also the first corporation to champion development of the MTAC for use in the inhospitable polar regions of Caldari Prime, before making the blueprints commercially available and working with the Caldari armed forces during the First Gallente-Caldari War to upgrade and arm them for combat use. The corporation still holds the rights to many fundamental MTAC design principles, property that it fiercely protects to this day. Hyasioda's corporate culture has evolved very little over its long history. It is an extremely conservative organization, with business strategies that lean heavily toward old-fashioned corporatism and established tradition. The corporation is still largely controlled by the family that founded it, and the social pressure on Hyasioda employees to conform is as great as ever, even for the Caldari state, where such pressure is a part of daily life. When the Caldari Providence Directorate came to power, Hyasioda was one of the loudest critics of the political arrangement, and often led opposition to Executor Heth within the CEP, alongside Ishukone. Under the guidance of late CEO Otro Gariushi, Ishukone became one of the leading corporations in the cluster, specializing in the production of high-tech equipment and machinery. It possesses some of the most advanced technology outside of Jovian space, and was instrumental in the development of capsuleer technology and capsule-based flight. Ishukone was, for a long time, the weakest of the Caldari megacorporations. Its main business model initially revolved around research and development, though it was rarely able to benefit greatly from any of its discoveries. Only in the last century or so has it bloomed, and it is now in the process of becoming one of the most powerful corporations in the Caldari state. Well known for maintaining an exceptionally high standard of living and support for its employees under the regime of Otro Gariushi, the corporation continues to follow this legacy under its new CEO, Mens Repola. The harshest and most open critic of both the Caldari Providence Directorate and tibus heth, Ishukone came close to bankruptcy during Heth's 5-year reign as executor of the Caldari state, due to both an expensive philanthropic legacy left behind by Otro Gariushi and trade restrictions placed on its dealings by the CPD as a consequence of its opposition. The Ishukone Corporation now also administrates the Caldari districts on Caldari Prime, after the Gallente Federation's successful execution of Operation Highlander, which removed the Leviathan-class Titan Shigeru from orbit, ending the half-decade-long siege of the Caldari homeworld. Led by the revered business tycoon Hartakan Oiritsu, Lakiota, or KK, as it is affectionately known, is the largest megacorporation in the state. KK has its fingers everywhere and in everything. Given its sheer size, Lakiota is the closest of the corporations to being a state within the state. Its humble beginnings date back to when the Caldari people were under the wing of the Gallente Federation. The corporation initially dabbled in trade with the Gallente, but soon became hugely successful in real estate, construction, and manufacturing. KK was at the forefront of the Caldari opposition against the Gallente Federation, a fact that is still used to great political effect today. After the rise to prominence of tibus heth during the Caldari constructions riots of YC-110, and his subsequent usurping of Oiritsu from the chief executive position that she had held for 4 decades, Lakiota suffered half a decade of heavy mismanagement and misappropriation of corporate funding that brought it close to filing for bankruptcy. After Heth was forcibly removed from office, a number of fire sales of assets from smaller corporations within its portfolio allowed the corporation to maintain solvency. Still the largest and most powerful of the Big Eight, Lakiota is now on the road to recovery after the reinstatement of Oiritsu as chief executive, 5 years after she was forced to part ways with the corporation by the Caldari Providence Directorate. Lai Dai has always advocated quality over quantity, taking pride in designing and manufacturing products of the highest standard. With several energetic research programs that rival the great Ishukone in their scope and forward-thinking audacity, Lai Dai is the maker of a vast and varied range of products, from high-tech medical equipment to the latest battlefield hardware. After the First Gallente-Caldari War, Caldari, which at the time was a relatively small conglomerate mostly focused on research, began branching out and investing in the Amar and Khanid corporations, supplying them with an infusion of technological creativity and forming corporate and political bonds that last to this day. Through the years, this enterprise has occasionally created conflicts of interest within the politics of the state, but Caldari's ideals and true devotion to Caldari above all else have always gotten it out of whatever political trouble it has found itself in. Usually referred to by its corporate moniker, NOH, Ngoyuvi was originally a conglomerate of small companies that manufactured all manner of luxury goods, ranging from mobile delicatessen units to quality furniture. Once the Caldari had formed their independent empire, this enterprising group quickly moved to fill the void created when the Gallente entertainment business was cut out. And over the years, NOH has gradually made entertainment its main focus. Time and time again, the corporation has been accused of underworld dealings and links to a number of organized crime syndicates within the state, as well as the Guristas pirates. These rumors, however, have never been substantiated. Sukuvesta, or Suvi, as it is more commonly called, is the second largest Caldari megacorporation. Heavily focused on agriculture, mining, real estate, and consumer products, it owns, according to estimates from the House of Records, over a third of all Caldari real estate, when the assets of its subsidiaries are included. Suvi has a reputation as one of the state's most ruthless corporations, seizing smaller rivals and selling off the spoils of hostile takeovers to ensure its dominance in whichever market sector it chooses. While this often causes tensions between it and the other megacorporations, particularly Karla Kyoto, Suvi's most hated rival, it has also forced competitors to think twice about challenging Sukuvesta in any market where it has significant influence. Throughout the ages, several scandals involving questionable gain of property and loss of innocent life have been quelled by Suvi's extensive PR department, known to be the most skilled of its kind operating in the Caldari state, and quite possibly the whole cluster. Known and respected throughout New Eden, the Seituoda family has been the driving force behind the Wirkomi Corporation ever since its inception over a century ago, in the years preceding the Gallente-Caldari War. With a reputation built upon the impeachable word of its founder, Tunal Seituoda, Wirkomi continues to enjoy unique relationships with many of New Eden's most influential corporations. Given the reputation of most megacorporations, Wirkomi is regarded by those inside and outside the state as a curious anomaly due to its reputation for straight-laced business practices. Though, as many an unwary competitor has learned over the years, this does not make it any less of a force to be reckoned with. The Seituoda family has long been known as one of the most loyal and patriotic entities within the Caldari state, commanding immense respect and remaining concerned with the promotion of Caldari ideals above all else. Though members of the family have become more reclusive in the wake of a few odious scandals in the last century, their corporate contacts remain as loyal as ever, due in no small part to the Wirkomi's corporation proven track record of unswerving allegiance to the state at large, as well as the corporation's own particular allies and associates. Political structure. While the state is built on corporate capitalism, which gives the corporations dictatorial powers, they are just as bound by Caldari customs and laws as the individual, and the fierce, continual competition between the corporations ensures a healthy, consumer-based social environment, which benefits everyone. The Chief Executive Panel. Together, the Big Eight, the nickname for the 8 megacorporations who handle most domestic matters, own more than 90% of all property within the state. Each of the 8 is made up of thousands of companies of various sizes, ranging from simple mining companies to powerful police organizations. Each corporation rules its territories like its own kingdom, with its own corporate law and little interference on domestic affairs from the Chief Executive Panel. The Chief Executive Panel is a political entity which itself is jointly owned and run by the Caldari megacorporations. The CEOs of the megacorporations sit on the board of the panel to ensure that the companies are kept in line when competing with each other, smoothing over potential conflicts before they escalate out of control. The panel also handles the foreign policy of the Caldari state and is the closest thing to a government that the Caldari have. The Chief Executive Panel also holds executive authority over the Caldari Navy, with the power to dictate any offensive or defensive actions deemed necessary to preserve the security of the state. House of Records. Owing to this rather fragmented style of leadership, the House of Records was also established by mutual agreement to act as a central source for record-keeping within the Caldari state. The House of Records acts as a national archive, digitally storing vast quantities of data that detail every transaction, business deal, and governmental interaction within the state. Caldari Business Tribunal. The Caldari Business Tribunal, or CBT, was established with mutual consent of the CEP. The CBT is regarded as the second most powerful entity within the state, operating independently of the Big Eight and authorized to mediate in, modify, or cancel any deal, transaction, or agreement made between corporations within the state. From the outside, to uninformed eyes, the Caldari state appears to be a solid and unified corporate meritocracy. While this has been true for short periods over its history, typically during times of great trouble for the Caldari people, there are 3 distinct ideological blocks within the state that have grown ever more apparent as Caldari society has evolved. The first of these blocks, the Practicals, is headed by the second largest megacorporation in the Caldari state, Suku Vesta. Commonly known as the Exploiters, the group also includes both the CBD Corporation and Nugoe Huvi. These corporations have practiced unethical business tactics for decades and are frequently associated with organized crime. The Practicals see the other empires as potential markets, ready to be exploited by unrestricted and unregulated trade, caring more for their bottom line than for who is a friend with whom, and even less about what long-term political ramifications their unscrupulous business practices can have. Basically mercantilist in their views on trade, they believe that profit for one always means loss for another, and they will stop at very little to ensure the state always comes out on top. The second of these 3 groups are the Liberals, whose views completely contradict those of the Practicals in regards to interstellar trade. The Liberal bloc believes in fostering improved relations with all the other empires, creating an interstellar environment where there are no trade barriers and where goods and services flow freely across borders. They believe in trade deals that mutually benefit the participants, and that the empires can come together in a peaceful, prosperous future world only through cooperation and unified trade. The Liberals are led by the extremely influential Ishukone Corporation, and also include the Hiyasioda Megacorporation and Ishukone's daughter corporation, Zainu Biotech. The state's strong position within Concord is maintained and accentuated by the Liberal bloc's belief that promoting universal peace so that trade can flow freely and cultures mingle peacefully is paramount to ensuring economic stability for the state. The final group is less concerned about trade than about the position that the Caldari state holds in contrast to the other empires, in terms of both military capability and economic strength. These are the Patriots, and they are led by the monolithic Kala Kyoto Corporation, which is the largest megacorporation in the Caldari state, followed by the Laidai and Wirkomi corporations. The Patriots seek to cultivate the Caldari heritage, and may often be found reminiscing about the great Rata Empire of old, or weeping for their lost homeworld, Caldari Prime. The most fanatical of them cry for a renewal of the war with the Federation, but they are a minority. The majority sees economic dominance across the cluster as a tool to promote a military power. The Patriots are willing to negotiate alternative ways to acquire Caldari Prime other than through war, but they know that they can only realize that dream by convincing the Federation of the economic and, most importantly, militaristic superiority of the Caldari state. They strive to promote a state that outshines the Federation in every possible way. Caldari society. The state offers its citizens the best and the worst in living conditions. As long as you keep in line, do your part for the greater good, and obey corporate law, life can be fairly pleasant and productive. However, to those not cut out for this strict, disciplined regime, life quickly becomes intolerable. Individuals who cannot fit into the regimented framework of Caldari society often find themselves losing their respect, family, and social status with unsettling rapidity, being left with few options besides ritual suicide or exile. Although not xenophobic as such, the Caldari are very protective of their way of life, and tolerate only those foreigners that stick to the rules. Given that megacorporations define their citizens' identities, the differences between the Detes and the Severe can be observed in their social habits, formal interactions, and philosophical approaches to being Caldari, rather than more overt ethnic markers. There is considerable academic debate over whether they can even be considered distinct ethnicities. Their characteristic social habits are a product of their upbringing, emphasized as a constituent heritage of the wider Caldari identity, but otherwise not regarded as an important aspect of a citizen's life. Those outside the state generally do not make a distinction between these social habits, instead considering them all to be an overall part of Caldari culture, a view the Caldari are more than happy to encourage. Despite identifying as one collective Caldari unit, the Deteus and Severe rarely intermarry. The corporate-controlled marriage system segregates members of opposing genders. Same-sex marriage is neither recognized nor legal within Caldari borders, a frequent topic of controversy between the Caldari and the considerably more liberal Galente. This grouping is based on similarities in physical appearance, alongside other considerations such as personal compatibility and socio-economic standing. Maintaining consistency in physical appearance over the generations is seen as just one of the many necessities in the preservation of the history and tradition of the Caldari people. The integrated nature of New Eden's interstellar economy has seen many listed Caldari space stations become notably cosmopolitan, as has occurred across all four empires. Space trade hubs such as Jita 44 see travelers and cultures from across the cluster. However, these areas only make up a minute fraction of the state. On planets and elsewhere, the Caldari culture continues to dominate, though the Galente economic and cultural influence established centuries ago, as well as its continuing efforts to permeate the state, never truly left. Caldari spirituality. While the Caldari are essentially a secular culture, there is no shortage of myth contained within their cultural heritage. Stories and folklore dating back to the early days of the Rata Empire can be found permeating every stratum of society. And though the Caldari do not view their mythical symbols in an overtly religious way, there is easily as much distilled wisdom to be found in their countless fables as in all of the Amar scriptures put together. The spiritual tradition is considered a part of the Caldari way, and is sometimes specifically discussed under the name Wayism. Ever since the time of the Rata Empire, the Caldari have found great purpose through their mythology, and they are great lovers of aphorisms and sententious poems. Though they certainly harbour a propensity for rigid traditionalism, they have little use for organised religion or dogmatic screeds. Such things seem to them a waste of time, energy, and resources. However, and no matter how much they themselves might deny it, there is a marked spiritual streak in the Caldari soul, particularly among the Achura. Caldari spirituality could be more accurately described as a system of thought or a philosophy rather than a religion, though many Caldari would not even go that far. One term for it in the Caldari language is kutuotomiru, best translated as mind tool, essentially a set of practical techniques meant to help an individual maximize their focus, equanimity, and mental fortitude. The practice of kutuotomiru within the Caldari way has expanded from an ancient core to include numerous sub-disciplines of mind and body, including martial forms. The foundation upon which practice of kutuotomiru rests is the activity of piercing the veil, essentially reaching beyond one's subjective interpretation of worldly phenomena and ideas to perceive the impassionate reality beneath it all. This exercise is said to remove extraneous clutter from the mind, sharpening it for whatever task is at hand. It is also said to calm the waters of a competitive intellect, roiling with hopes of power and victory, ensuring that the desire for glory, so powerfully instilled in all Caldari, doesn't run away with the individual. In kutuotomiru practice, it is entirely possible, in fact rather common, for there to be no mention of any kind of deity and no inkling of any sort of worship. Indeed, as far as many corporate Caldari can be said to worship anything, it is reality itself that they revere. Growing up in the state. The Caldari homeworld, Caldari Prime, was an exceedingly inhospitable planet when the first colonists settled there many thousands of years ago. In order for them to survive in the wake of the Eve Gates collapse, it was necessary to adopt stringent social and behavioral codes and to inculcate in their children a love for discipline and merit. Being good at something became not just desirable, but simply a necessary survival trait, and therefore it naturally followed that the better you were at something, the more value you brought to society. From birth, a Caldari child is bound to the corporate state. Almost universally, children are born in corporate medical facilities under the supervision of the best specialists that the parents' rank and status dictates. Any genetic manipulation, implants, or other treatments are also assigned on the basis of the family's contribution to the state. Families wishing for better care can work out an agreement with their individual employers. This usually involves borrowing additional funds and paying them back over time out of the parents' salaries. Many families will take this option to cover low-cost procedures, but it is typically regarded as socially unacceptable to seek out expensive and extravagant procedures. Thereafter, with the assistance of a variety of childcare corporations, parents raise and monitor the child closely. Early on, children learn games that help observers to assess intelligence, physical prowess, and aggressive tendencies. These activities help educational corporations work with families to decide what schooling best suits the child. A family can pay for superior training if they desire, but once again, unnecessary spending is discouraged and often does not help a child's advancement. Once of age to enter school, children are taught a variety of subjects. The exact curriculum varies depending on the corporation overseeing each child's education, but basic economics and the history and philosophy of the Caldari state are universal. The basic curriculum prepares the students for talent-based specialty schools later in their education. Grading is invariably done on a curve to promote competition, and rewards are given to students with consistently superior marks. Exceptional or underperforming students are re-evaluated and may be moved to different schools as a result. Teamwork exercises are mixed with competitive grading to produce students who embody both ambition and cooperation. In addition to academics, children are encouraged to socialize with their various fellow students in other ways. Much of this adolescent socializing is done around clubs and extracurricular activities, where new members usually must pass some sort of entrance test to be accepted. Students tend to socialize with fellow club members, and members often compete internally for leadership roles and privileges. Teamwork is also emphasized, though, with a variety of competitions pitting the members of one group against another. Prizes for success are special privileges and resources for the club and its members. Through these extracurricular activities, Caldari children are introduced to a number of competitive sports. Martial arts, contact sports, and games combining creativity with tactical cunning are the most popular. Exceptional performance in these activities often results in acknowledgement and privilege, and talent scouts for the professional leagues monitor potential stars as early as elementary school. Injuries are common in this domain, but medical care in the state is first among the empires, and is additionally free of charge to citizens. Attendance at these sporting events is a major pastime for both children and their parents. The military also takes an active role in a child's life. Most schools teach basic military history, and soldiers regularly come to speak to classes and discuss careers in the service. So strong is the nation's military tradition that after formal schooling is completed, every citizen must complete a very basic form of military training and 3 years of conscripted state military service before beginning their working life, even if they are not headed for a military career. This is one of the fundamental reasons why the state is able to mobilize so quickly in case of a national emergency. By the time a child graduates from secondary school, he is well on his way to his career. The student and his family are provided with a list of corporate-approved universities and academies appropriate to his academic level. Though students can go to more prestigious schools if their families pay the extra education costs back to the state, most students simply attend the best school picked for them. In almost all cases where a student would want to make their own choice, they would base their decision on which school would maximize their natural abilities in such a way that they could offer the maximum benefit to the state. Caldari universities and academies are very similar in structure to earlier schooling. Grading is curved. Socialization is based around activities and studies that test creativity, logic, strategy, and other traits deemed useful to the state. And the successful are earmarked for placement within the upper ranks of Caldari society. Upon reaching adulthood, a Caldari individual will have been tempered in the fires of adversity and competition. They will have learned to view themselves as a vital part of Caldari society, and they will have also learned that the winners benefit the most from that same society.